Good morning, Madam President. We're recording.
Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel?
Good morning. In conformity with California Assembly Bill AB 361, and due to the public health concerns and directives issued by the Mayor of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles County Public Health Department regarding reducing the spread of COVID-19, this meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners will be conducted with some or all commissioners appearing virtually from remote locations. All public comment will be taken telephonically, and members of the public wishing to call in and offer public comment can do so by calling 213-306-3065. Again, that number is 213-306-3065. When prompted, please enter meeting code 249-7135-9328. Again, that code is 249-7135-9328. The Secretary will call on you when it is your turn to speak. Please state whether you are speaking on a specific agenda item or just general public comment. You will have 2 minutes to speak per item for a total of 5 minutes for all items. It is important when you are calling to please turn down the volume on your devices so we do not get feedback. We may announce a recess if we have difficulties or lose a quorum due to technical difficulties. The Acting Board Secretary will now take roll.
Thank you. President McCLAIN-HILL?
Present.
Vice President Reyes?
Present.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins?
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Present.
4 members present and a quorum. I will now turn the meeting over to President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you. I have no opening remarks today, except to say that I, as we all are aware of the fact that the commission is, or that the department is working through this Omicron surge, like businesses all across the country. We are very much aware of the severe burden that the high level of infection is taking on everybody, and want to express our appreciation for the work that's being done by the employees throughout the department, both those who are continuing to report to their place of work, those who are telecommuting at home, and those out in the field who throughout this pandemic have continued to show up day in and day out to do their very best to keep lights on and water flowing. So with that, I will open the meeting and move to the first item. General public comment. Board Secretary.
Board President, there is no public comment, so all public comment is now closed.
Okay, thank you. So we will then move to the briefing from the General Manager.
Good morning, Madam President and board members. It's good to see everybody here today, and I look forward to, again, being back in person one of these days. Hopefully we'll get past this surge, and I appreciate the comments you made regarding the commitment and dedication of our employees, who are certainly not without being impacted by the same thing that we're seeing in the public, but they continue to do the role that they have to play to make the water flow and the lights stay on in the city of Los Angeles to serve everybody, and they're doing a great job of it. I did want to point out a few things that is important for the board to know this week. On Friday the 14th, a lot of us were able to attend a funeral, a memorial to honor Mike Lemester. That was our senior cable splicer. He's one who died in the line of duty in the harbor area down in early November. And of course, the tragic accident, but a large number of family, friends, and colleagues were there to be able to pay their respects to Mike. We had managers from throughout the department, and really a show of appreciation for what he meant to the department, for the work, for truly the employee, the strong leader that he was in the workplace, and the impact that he had on so many people in his craft, training them, setting an example, and really being a leader. And so it's a tremendous loss. We were very appreciative to be able to pay our respects and to attend the memorial service for him. We also, interestingly, had a lot of media coverage. KTLA, KCAL, and the OC Register all ran articles about this, really recognizing the fact that water and power employees also are in the line of danger. They provide vital public service, and they put themselves in the line day in and day out. And so it was nice to receive some media recognition of the hazards of the work that our folks do, and also help appreciate the sacrifice that Mike and his family made in the line of duty. The following day, a week ago, last Saturday, we received some other sad news. Linda Archulerius passed away. Linda was an Inyo County supervisor who worked very closely with the department. A number of us who are still here worked with Linda for many years. She spent 21 years on the Board of Supervisors at Inyo County, started in 1993, and finally retired after being elected through 5 terms in 2014. Linda was one of a kind. She had a great impact on the relationship that we had with Inyo County. She was a tremendous person to work with, not just in negotiating, but really in seeking fair solutions. She was instrumental in bringing about some, reasonableness with the Great Basin Board that she served on in terms of how we dealt with dust control, saving water on Owens Lake, doing things that protected the Owens Valley, at the same time recognizing the water rights of the city of Los Angeles and appreciating the fact that we had a job to do. She was never afraid to compromise, and a number of us worked very, very closely with her during her time, her more than 2 decades as a supervisor in Inyo County. And so our hearts, reach out to her husband, Howard. Her son, Ben, actually is an employee for us up in the Owens Valley, has been for many years. But Linda's a great loss to the community, and I know that in Inyo County, they're feeling her loss very deeply, especially amongst the Board of Commissioners. And so our condolences to the family and to the entire county, who's lost a real icon who served so long in that region. The next thing I want to bring about is some good news. On the Martin Luther King Memorial weekend, we were able to get out our state assistance program that allowed us to pay off bills, that are overdue bills for both water and power service for residential customers that had accrued during the COVID pandemic. We had the money that we announced that had come from the state. In total, about $285 million will be distributed. Over that weekend, our IT group, as well as FSO and customer services, had planned a very smooth transition, and we successfully applied about $275 million plus to close to 250,000 accounts. And so we did about $200 million in electric service, over 235,000 accounts, and about $74 million in water accounts. A lot of those accounts overlap, recognizing that in multifamily units, people have an electric bill but don't always have a water bill. And so what this did was zero out outstanding debt for all residential customers who had accrued a debt older than 60 days during the pandemic. And so this is a tremendous benefit. Customers have been notified. Communications continue to be made with customers, and now we're working on the little extra money that the board had dedicated to folks outside that window to try to continue to help some of our residents who've had difficulty during the pandemic time in keeping up with their water and power bills. We received another award last week. It was the 2021 Sustainable Purchasing Award. It was in the special initiatives category, having to do with our performance in procurement, particularly related to our growing electric vehicle infrastructure that we are putting out. And this is from the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council. And so it was great to be recognized in this area, and our hats go off to Erin Henning and her group in supply chain, as well as Nancy Sutley's group and the sustainability folks who've done a great job in really furthering our efforts and being recognized for the work that they are doing. I'd like to turn over quickly to Anselmo Collins to talk about the latest in the snowpack and where we are with drought conditions. Anselmo?
Thank you, Marty. Good morning, commissioners. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Last week on the 20th of January, the State Department of Water Resources announced that the allocation of state water project was being increased from 0%, which is what we were told in December, to 15%. So that's a pretty significant increase, and that's certainly great news. This is basically due to the great storms that we had in the month of December that allowed us to fill some of the reservoirs to a higher level as a result of the storm. So the conditions have improved, but it's still too early to say that it's a drought buster. We are still expecting to have a third dry consecutive year in 2022. So we need to continue with our water efficiency and water conservation messaging and reminding all our customers that watering is limited to only 3 days a week. There is no watering between 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and also no watering when it's either raining or within 48 hours from a rain event. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Anselmo. The February marks the beginning of Black History Month, and it'll go through the entire month of February. We'll have a number of events planned, and we're working closely with our own NSBE chapter, who will be co-sponsoring events along with our public affairs group. And also February 1st is also the Lunar New Year. And so we'll have some events in recognition of that, supported by a group of Aspires, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders supporting progress, inclusion, respect, and empowerment. So it's a mouthful. The Aspire group will help us recognize the Lunar New Year. It's important that we always, really take advantage of these opportunities to recognize and celebrate the diversity of our workforce and really appreciate the cultural backgrounds that make the tapestry that's the Department of Water and Power and so well reflects the city of Los Angeles. And so as we grow that and work in these areas, we appreciate the chance to celebrate this diversity and celebrate the cultural heritage that all the groups of the department bring. So lastly, I will turn over to Brian Wilbur. He has a very good news report about some mutual aid work we did with the Navajo Nation as part of our training and development in terms of preparing our crews in different conditions of what we're used to working on. And Brian has a great report and a short video to show. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Marty. Good morning, commissioners. So from November 12th through December 22nd, we started a mutual aid training program, and we teamed up with the NTUA for this exercise, and the benefits far outdid what our expectations were. We do mutual aid all the time here at the department, and we've deployed in Puerto Rico for hurricanes, New York for winter storms, Northern California for fires, and each time it brings up a new challenge for us. And although with our Office of Emergency Management, we do tabletop exercises all the time to prepare us, but it's mostly on the administrative side, and so we don't always get that real life deployment issues to address those problems before. So in July, when we went to visit the Navajo Nation, we got together with the NTUA and we developed a program where we can go ahead and go to their land, do a training exercise that'll benefit us for the training and preparing for natural disasters, but also benefit the Navajo Nation, right? They have a project there where they have more than 14,000 people that have never had electricity in their homes. So they set up all the work for us to go ahead and move forward and go through with this training exercise. Next slide. So in the beginning of November, we pulled the trigger, and in 2 weeks' notice, we deployed trucks, crews, operators, and equipment and materials all to the Navajo Nation and started this project out. Next slide. You can see the traffic there in the Navajo lands are a little bit different than they are here in LA. The local traffic problems are certainly different, but the views are spectacular. Next slide. One of the issues the first things that we encountered is the distance between jobs. So when we're working in a rural area, the gas mileage on the vehicles that you use becomes a huge issue because fuel is hard to come by, and the great distances between the jobs and the projects that we were doing was certainly an issue. Next slide. The equipment in these harsh terrains is definitely different than what we normally do here. We ended up having to have essentially rigging trucks with tracks, tank tracks, in order just to get to the areas where we need to put the infrastructure in place. Next slide. This one you'll probably hear about more and more. This is part of the Chinchibetto project, which was a little over 9 miles worth of stringing line that we put in with 20 laterals to feed 20 homes out there. This was an extensive project, and it's hard to see in this picture, but this one started up in the far right-hand corner. You see a little outcrop of rocks out there is where this project started, and brought this across the desert. And this is about the halfway point for this project. Next slide. Like I said, the terrain was very rough in certain areas. This is certainly things that we're not used to, but it's something that we face when we go ahead and work on other utilities with different voltages. We were able to team up. They have their utility, their linemen worked with ours hand in hand. So we've got a lot of new skills out of this, different ways of doing things. Obviously, the land and the construction was much different than we were used to. So as a training exercise, this went over very well. Next slide. It did get cold. We did this from November through December. So not quite Southern California weather that we were used to. This was a great opportunity, and this was some of the pitfalls that we ran into, not only fueling, vehicle breakdowns, but just the cold weather gear that was needed, the different equipment that we used to get through the hard ground, just jackets and socks to keep people warm, the food. So this was a great learning exercise for us, but the benefit to the Navajo Nation was also fantastic. Next slide. The NTUA put a video together. They filmed a lot of what we did, and they sent this over to us. So go ahead and hit the next slide. Present this video.
Anytime that they can get their hands on something different, it provides them with a broader experience, a larger set of skills that they can use and take forward with them throughout their career, right? It'll make them safer. It'll make them, higher skill level, right? More valuable anywhere they go, right? And they're going to be able to pass those skills on and teach those skills. Actually, working with your crew members has been great. They've actually taught my guys a lot, taught me a lot. Mm-hmm. They've all been pretty welcoming, hard-working guys, and willing to show my guys anything. So yeah, I think they're learning, increasing their skill level. That's always valuable.
And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So it's like, wow, we're just like excited and happy for my mom, my dad to finally have electricity for so long. Finally see what electricity looked like.
I was very fortunate that we were part of it. And I'm so thankful for these people that volunteered to come out here and to help us. And, they had to give up their family, time with their family to be here to help us. I think they're very special because they took the time to be out here. And I cried when they were leaving. And you would think that people in Los Angeles, they don't care, but they do.
This is a very exciting day for me, to finally have electricity and to know that my life's going to get better, it's going to improve. So this is a very good day, and I was very anxious. Like I said, I waited 14 years, for this, and finally the day has come, and I'm thankful for it.
Shito Ishta Ishingolia tears of joy. Bashkwazo Alfiye Bashkwazo.
I don't know how else to explain it, because I've never lived without power in my life. So seeing someone having to go through that, and even with the water, going to get the water every day or every other day of the week, it's an eye-opening experience, and it just makes us, not take too much for granted.
They came out and thanked us. We actually had one family bring out some fry bread. We had a little dessert, almost like a funnel cake. It was pretty amazing. I don't know. I can't put it into words. I feel thankful to be out here, to be able to give people power.
It really gets you a little emotional, because thinking about something that we totally take for granted, and they've never had it. So, it really chokes you up a little bit. So it's unimaginable that they've been going for so long without it.
At home, we get that power. Everybody almost has it, and there's different ways to getting it. But here, you appreciate the type of work you do now, because now you're seeing the bigger picture of how much they appreciate it. And sometimes we don't get that back, and it feels good. And you see that, and you're like, oh, okay, this is well worth me being where I'm at now.
We wanted to see it through. We want to see the lights go on. We want to see the look on people's faces. We want to see the joy that people have to finally have something that they haven't had before. Just to see that people are gonna finally have it. I mean, it's gonna be a really good feeling in my heart. I'm sure, and all the rest of the guys. That's why nobody wanted to leave this project.
So thank you. I'm just kind of feeling sad that the people that wanted this power line, water line, you name it, they're gone. And it's just you've done it in like overnight. So thank you very much. Hey, say hey.
Electricity is really the foundation to improving the quality of life for our Navajo citizens. I want to say to each and every one of you, thank you. On behalf of the Navajo people, we appreciate your support. These families have gone without electricity for many generations. And now, with your help, they will be able to turn on the light, get information, especially in the time of a pandemic.
So as you can see, there was the benefit of this, we did this as a training exercise. We went out there, but the mutual benefit and just the added benefit of providing service to, and just the interaction with the Navajo people, is something that touched everybody that went out there. This was a very, very successful project when we look at not only the benefits that we had, but the benefits that the Navajo Nation. We look forward to continuing our relationship with them. And look at future training exercises that that we can continue to do these type of things. So all in all, this project was a tremendous success. We still have a lot of logistics that we'll go through on all the benefits that we had going out here, identifying the pitfalls. But the big thing here is how much it touched all the crew members that were there and the appreciation that they had for the Navajo people, and all the things that we take for granted. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. And Madam President, that's the conclusion of my report, unless there's any comments or questions.
Thank you. Are there comments from any board member or questions?
I wondered if the schools had electricity.
So this project was mostly bringing electricity to the houses. A lot of the schools are in the main parts of their towns, which are quite a distance from the communities that serve them. So most of the schools are in town and they do have electricity there. Our project was mostly bringing out to the rural homes that are far outside the main thoroughfares.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I think I heard
I want
Susana.
to commend you. Yeah, commend you. I think this was a great project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barad Hopkins. Susana, did you have a comment?
I just want to express my heartfelt gratitude for this partnership. I believe this is part of Councilmember O'Farrell's Light Up Navajo. Is that the part of this project that we have with the Navajo Nation? Brian?
So the Light Up Navajo is there. So they have federal funding that they have for lighting up Navajo. So we were doing similar jobs. So essentially the jobs that they have for the Light Up Navajo, and that's a volunteer of a lot of utilities through APPA participate in that project. We did this as a separate project from Light Up Navajo, right? So this was kind of just a mutual benefit between us and the NTUA.
Thank you. That's more wonderful for me because I think it's an example of leading by equity, and it's mutually beneficial, not only for the Navajo Nation, the 90-something homes that were lit up, but also for our employees to have that lived experience of assisting and helping, light up homes for the first time in those communities. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it.
Commissioner Brady, NEEMAN Brady, did I see you with a comment?
I just wanted to say how moved I was by this and how meaningful it clearly was. So I appreciate everyone's efforts.
Thank you. I know that we've got a lot of time constraints in our agenda today, so I won't belabor the point too much, except to say that it is really something in a time when because of the virus, literally our faces are covered quite a lot, and it's so difficult to make connections over Zoom meetings and in the confines of dealing with this crisis. So it was really very moving to see our members of our department performing this kind of work under those conditions in a way that resulted in both benefits to the department and to the Navajo Nation. To Susana's point, this is what equity can look like on the ground. It's also just what the kind of human connection and the importance of the jobs that our workforce perform every day. It's just it really underscores their significance. So Brian, thanks for pulling this together and helping to make it happen. And also please convey our gratitude and our commendation of our field crews. We do appreciate them, and it's just hard for us to adequately display that under these current circumstances. And we're sort of moving into year 3 now, but let them know. It matters to all of us, so thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to the next item. I'm unaware of any motions for future consideration, and I see none on my screen. So we can go to item F. Dr. Pickle, do you have any comments, or are you waiting until items come up?
If questions come up, yes. We have no comments at the start.
Okay, thank you so very much. Yvette, I understand that we do not have any community impact reports. Is that correct?
Yes, no community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Then we will go to item H. I am not aware of any items that have been selected for commission discussion. Are there any such items? If
None from me.
If not, may we have a motion on items L1 through L5?
So move approval for items L1 through L5.
I'll second.
I'll call the vote. President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Vice President Reyes?
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Aye.
4 ayes, passed.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. We'll now move to, oh, I'm sorry. We will now have presentations on management reports, starting with the Cal OSHA recordable and reportable injury cases.
Great. And Nazir Fazli will, our head of corporate safety, will lead this report.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you, Marty. Today's presentation is an update on Cal OSHA reportable and recordable injuries. Also, this report will include data on the frequency, causes, and workers' comp cost of preventable injuries, as well as mitigation plans. Next slide, please. Starting with the definition for recordable and reportable injuries. So Cal OSHA defines recordable injuries as any injury that requires more than just first aid care, or it results in days away from work, or restricted or transfer from their normal duties. So a restricted duty means that injured employee, for the most part, they can perform their duties, but they have some medical limitations. For example, they may not be able to lift more than a certain amount of weight. Where a transfer means that employee can no longer perform their duties and they have to be transferred temporarily, accommodated to a different position. An example may be a field employee is temporarily assigned to office duties. A reportable injury, on the other hand, is more serious in nature. These are fatalities or any injury that employee loses a body part, an eye, or employee is admitted in the hospital. And we are required to report all of reportable injuries to Cal OSHA office within 8 hours. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the total number of reportable injuries, recordables, as well as total workers' comp cases filed for the years 2017 through 21, 5 years. So in this slide, we see, if we look at the year 2017 on the left, we see 980 cases of workers' comp cases were filed. Of those, 593 of them were determined to be work-related, and met the criteria for recordability. And of those, 5 of those injuries were serious and they met the criteria for reportability. So if we look to the right, we can see a significant decrease, a drop in the year 2020 in comparison to 2019 in number of workers' comp claims from 1,035 to 706. These are largely associated with COVID issues, fewer employees on the job. And we had a minor or a slight drop in number of recordable injuries. Our reportable injuries or serious injuries remained roughly the same during those time periods. So all of these injuries are investigated. All of the minor injuries are investigated at the local level, at the division level. All of the serious injuries are investigated at the system safety level. And all of the reportable injuries, we form a accident investigation committee, an AIC. The objective, the goal of all of these investigations are to identify the root causes, determine the contributing factors, and make recommendations and to prevent reoccurrence. So we do track all of the recommendations on the AIC recommendations. These are the Accident Investigation Committee investigation with JSI to make sure that these corrective actions are completed in time to prevent reoccurrence. Next slide, please. So this to determine, to identify who is getting hurt, we look at a number of data points. In this slide, we are looking at average number of employees and average workers' comp cases filed for the years 2017 through year 2021 based on employee years of service and employee age. So if we look at the highlighted bars, we're looking at all of these employees have less than 10 years of service, but they are in different age groups. So on the left, we're looking at employees in their 20s with less than 10 years of service. We see they make up 9% of workforce, and they filed 9% of workers' comp cases. As employee age increases, we can see to the right, all the way to age 50, we can see same number of years of experience, but older employees, they tend to get hurt more and file more workers' comp cases. So this information is shared with the groups and divisions. Based on this information, managers can manage hazards at the workplace, particularly slip, trips, and falls. As we know, most of our injuries are slip, trips, and falls, and slip and trip and fall have different outcome, or they're more challenging for an older person than a younger generation. Also, we use this information to develop training, not only just for older employees to get more familiar with new technologies, with new tools or new procedures, but also training for supervisors managing older employees. Next slide, please. So this slide is OSHA recordable rates, and this is for the year 2019 and through year 2020. The way we calculate rate is based on Cal OSHA standard formula. Basically, it's the number of injuries for every 100 employee in a 12-month period divided by the hours on the job, or exposure hours. In this slide is based on employee years of service. It's not limited by age. So if we look on the left on the pie chart, we see 53% of our employees in the years 2019 and 2020 had less than 10 years of service. So this is not limited by age. They represent all age groups. And if we look to the right, we can see the same group, employees with less than 10 years of service, they report significantly high number of injuries. In comparison to employees with more than 30 years of service, they report twice as much as rate of injury than more experienced employees. Next slide, please. So this slide is same, but except this is based on employee age. So if we look on the left, we see between age group of 40 and 50, 55% of our employees in years 19 and 20 were in 40s and 50 age group. And roughly, they report slightly higher rate of injuries than the rest. But it's important to note that employees that are older and with more years of experience, their types of injuries are somewhat, for the most part, different. They're more chronic or cumulative injuries, for example, carpal tunnel, loss of hearing, where on the younger generation, younger employees, they tend to, most of the injuries are acute, cuts and pinch points. So there are some differences between the types of injuries. Next slide, please. So in order for us to identify how employees get hurt or how these injuries occur, we look at a number of different data points. In this slide, we're looking at injury types broken by body parts and nature of injury. So on the left, we're looking at body parts involved in the accident. We can see that more than 15% of our injuries involve more than just one body part, followed by back injuries are more than 10%, more than 11%, and knee injuries are 8.5%. Both of these injuries, the cause of these injuries are more likely cumulative and repetitive action, improper ergonomics. Where on the other hand, a finger and hand injury that they account for almost 14% of injury, they're more acute. They're pinch points, cuts, and the employee may not be wearing proper hand protection. So, and these are the top 10 body parts. So we track all of body parts involved in the accidents. If we look to the right, we can see that contusions, sprains, and strains account for more than 60% of nature of injuries. So most of these injuries are as a result of slip, trips, and falls. And we use this to share with the groups for training purposes to determine and fine-tune training programs. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the cost of these preventable injuries. On the left are the number of days away from work. And now, it's important to note that these days do not include restricted duty or so this is or transfer. These are strictly employee completely has injured employee is not at work. So in 2017, a total of more than 22,000 employee hours were lost due to injuries. On the right, we can see there was a drop in year 2020 in comparison to 2019, and 2021 there is another rise. In 2020, we had fewer employees due to COVID reasons at workplace. In year 2021, more employees returned back to the office, so our numbers did increase. On the right, we're looking at the workers' comp claim payments. Now, these are important to also to note that these are direct payments. These are the actual payments made for employee compensations, medical costs, and legal fees. So in 2017, there was more than $20 million paid out, and in year 2020, that number did increase to $22 million. And the cost of indirect workers' comp costs is actually more than the direct cost, and that includes all of the administrative costs, all of the costs of other employees performing injured employees' work, loss in productivity, the accident investigation, equipment replacement because they were damaged as a result of injuries. The cost of indirect costs to the department could be as much as 4 times as what we see on the screen here. Next slide, please. So we also track vehicle accidents. A number of our injuries are associated with vehicle accidents. This slide represents the total, the blue bars are the total number of accidents, vehicle accidents for the year 2019 and 2020 for every month. And the line, the red line represents the number of preventable vehicle accidents. We investigate all of vehicle accidents to determine if employees' driving practices contributed to the accident. That information is shared with the groups that can be used for training purposes as well as corrective action, and also to identify repeat offenders, if you will. Next slide, please. So as far as our mitigation efforts, in addition to everything we talked about, we also use a number of processes and tools to identify hazards and mitigate these hazards. First, starting with one of the key elements of our safety management system is that all of the safety groups report to one organizational chart or umbrella, if you will. In December, consolidation of workers' compensation, occupational health, as well as corporate safety to work together and report under Corporate Health and Safety Office. This is a significant step forward towards creating a strong safety culture that will result in improved safety performance. Working together closer than before, it will improve employee safety. It will decrease a number of injuries and obviously decrease compensation costs of those injuries. We also are expanding our safety by design process. So safety by design process is a concept applying the safety into the design stages of all projects. So with safety by design, currently both systems, water system as well as power system, they have their own groups working on safety by design. Water system is more advanced, and they have a dedicated group working on that. So safety by design allows the design engineers to collaborate with the employees who will be operating those systems, who will be working in those facilities, collaborate with them early in the design stages to identify all potential hazards and design those hazards out or eliminate those hazards. In cases that those hazards that cannot be eliminated, then they can implement engineering controls to isolate employees who do operate and maintain those facilities and those systems, isolate them from those potential hazards. So it is very helpful. We are working very closely with water system and power system. Eventually, we will have a DWP-wide system by design program that everybody starting any new projects, any new designs will follow the guidelines of safety by design. We also invest and we are using tools and equipment to predict injuries and take appropriate actions to mitigate those exposures. For example, earlier we talked about a number of our injuries are as a result of repetitive motions, knee injuries, back injuries, shoulder. Those are all as a result of improper ergonomics. So we will be using field ergo motion capture evaluation software. This software uses smart technology. It is able to identify, recognize body motions and determine if those are improper posture. They can recognize prolonged posture or frequent body movements, and it can recognize and identify whether that posture could lead to injuries and recommend appropriate correct movements for those employees. The video is captured by a video. That video is uploaded in a database. The database is accessible by employees that they can download a correct solution for the problem that this field ergo motion capture evaluation program identifies. And this is going to be very beneficial for a lot of our repetitive motion injuries, including back and office environment especially. But it's not limited to office. Of course, this will be used for all employees doing all types of work. Another tool that we are using is Crew Visitation application or app. This app was developed as a result of an accident investigation recommendation. This accident investigation committee determined crews or field supervisors and managers were not visiting crews frequent enough, and the accident was as a result of lack of supervision or management, if you will. The crew visitation app was developed to document the frequency of these visits, and it was very successful. But now we have enhanced and improved the capacity that this crew visitation app now is able to, the supervisors and managers, they can upload their observations in this database, and this database is accessible that can generate reports that can identify gaps and trends. And based on that, we can predict future hazards and exposures and take appropriate actions to eliminate those hazards. Next slide, please. This is for next step, if you will. This is one of the SMART goals identified during our safety culture, or rather culture management plan workshops. The corporate health and safety was tasked to identify groups with the highest rate of injuries and work with those groups to mitigate and eliminate the hazards and lower those injury rates. So the way we are going to do this, we will work with these groups, not with just managers, but we will be working with employees who are doing actually the work, identify exactly who's getting hurt and why they're getting hurt. We will observe their work practices, and together, collectively, we will come up with solutions, whether it's going to be new tools, new training, and the enhanced or improved work practices, and we will monitor their improvements and their performance, and gauge that, and make adjustments as it becomes necessary. This is the conclusion of this report, unless there are concerns, questions, or comments.
Thank you very much for this report. I know that I'm going to lose Commissioner NEEMAN Brady shortly, so I'll go to her first. Do you have any questions or comments regarding this presentation?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with questions or comments? I don't see any. I would simply say, Nazir, that first, thank you. The report is, as always, thorough and illuminating. What I take note of is the relatively flat rate of injury, both reportable and recordable. And I'm concerned about the number of reportable injuries. Last year, they seem to, not only be on the uptick, but significantly so. I mean, as you know, reportable injuries represent a pretty serious category. And we had, I'm not looking at the presentation but I think it was 7 last year. Also, prior to the pandemic, we seem to be trending, if not up, certainly not down in these areas. And so I am very interested in how we manage our work or how we manage this area of our work in a way that begins to see some declines. And as you know, it's difficult to fully evaluate what we're being presented without there being some metric against the numbers. So, and I know in the past that you have indicated or have shown us where we have, where we track, where we fall in terms of benchmarks against other agencies. I also know that there's not a perfect benchmark. So I'm clear about that, just because the nature of our business is because we're combined water and power, and also because we tend to report more aggressively, potentially, than others. But I'm seriously interested in better understanding how we target and reduce in a very dramatic way the number of reportable injuries. I mean, we started at 5, and we, in 2021, we're up to 7. That's very, very concerning. The fact that the rest of these numbers are remaining kind of constant is also suggesting to me that there is additional work to be done and we should be seeing reductions. Also, thank you for the reference to bringing together the financial impact of these issues, because budget and how we spend our money is an important thing. And if we are spending indirect cost, 20+ million, but potentially an indirect cost upwards of $100 million on preventable injuries, that is it's not pocket change. That is a matter that will need to be aggressively, seriously managed and monitored. So I continue to be very impressed with the thoroughness and comprehensive way in which you think about safety. I am very much interested in starting now to not just report, but start to connect the impact and to see some relationship between the impact of the programs and the consolidations and the work that we're doing over and against the actual injury trends.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
McCLAIN-HILL, I just want to add something as well. Well, first, thank you for the thoroughness of the report, Ms. Ayer. I think we want to achieve the best results and outcomes with our safety program and get our employees back to work, you're right, with minimal delay because of their injuries and all that. We have our programs that are designed to make them safer, to make them whole. But I also want focus, and I didn't really see it, on mental health, and especially during this pandemic where there are stressors that we may not realize our employees are having that are affecting the work that they do. So if we can have a more holistic approach and include that as part of the safety and health programs that we have, because I do believe that focusing, having more education about them, equipping, using tools and the support they need to really feel empowered for work or returning to work for those people who are injured. So that's just my addition to this report, and hopefully we can come back with a report on our mental health program, because I'd really like to see that, especially because during this pandemic, we know that there are stressors impacting our employees' return to work. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll definitely include mental health in the next report.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that, Commissioner Reyes. Thank you. We're ready for the next report. That will be, I think, brought forward by Monique Earl.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to provide a status report to the board on the department's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I have to say, my arrival just 5 months ago was met by engaged and enthusiastic employees, as well as leadership excited to make a difference on this front. I also have to give a shout out to our many formal and informal employee resource groups that have been on the front lines of this work for many decades and who are excited about this office coming to fruition. Next slide. As an overview, this presentation will cover 5 key topics, starting off with the overall vision and approach to DE&I and how we will move the work of this office forward. Next, I'll talk about the core pillars and areas of focus. And moving on, I will cover the importance of culture change and how it plays a key role in implementing this work. Lastly, I will let you know where the office is on hiring and then cover next steps in terms of priority projects. Next slide. Commissioners, as you all know, in 2020, through the vision of this body and the general manager, the department engaged the workforce and a myriad of stakeholders around issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This resulted in the development of the Racial Equity Action Plan. To anchor these initiatives, the 2 recommendations listed here is the establishment of this office and hiring the Chief DE&I Officer. This office was designed to support the Board of Water and Power Commissioners, General Manager, and leadership team as part of a much broader and transformative culture change initiative to embed DE&I principles throughout the fabric of our organization. Next slide. A broad overarching vision is found in the Racial Equity Action Plan. This vision has 3 core objectives: to be a reflection of the diverse communities we serve, to create a culture where every single employee feels seen, heard, and valued, and opportunities for career advancement are equitable, and to understand that utilities, as a result of their physical and financial assets, human capital, and community mission, have a substantial opportunity to positively contribute to the environmental, economic, and social resilience of the communities that we serve. Next slide. As you all know, moving a vision into reality is not something that happens overnight. To see real, sustainable change that lives beyond this moment, it is important that we take a comprehensive, multifaceted approach to this work. Our 6-pronged approach starts simply with strengthening our collective knowledge base and continued education around DEI principles for leaders and employees. It is essential to implement and sustain the work ahead. One-off trainings that simply check a box will no longer suffice in this area. Enhancing and continuing our important partnership with employees through the creation of a DE&I Equity Council will be a key part of our strategy. Crafting mentoring programs so that all employees that are interested can build relationships that lead to career growth and advancement will be central. And weaving in all perspectives and lived experience will be core to DE&I initiatives and partnerships. Our community sphere of influence strategy is to give all our stakeholders a microphone instead of just a seat at the table. We will prioritize the experiences of our employees through surveys, listening sessions, and focus groups, and weave that feedback into our policies and programming. And lastly, we will mean what we say and say what we mean, using equity metrics and accountability to measure success. Next slide. Utilizing that 6-pronged approach, this office is structured in 5 key areas of focus: employee education, recruitment and development, which also includes HR policies and practices, strengthening our supplier diversity program, increased and collaborative community engagement, and building upon our existing equity metrics program to put an equity lens across the organization, both internally and externally. Next slide. As LADWP faces a rising number of retirements, competitive threats, and workforce demands to meet aggressive 21st century goals, it is important that we reimagine key workforce development drivers, such as hiring, recruitment, training, and employee development. For example, one of the key goals in this area listed here is working with city personnel to give the department flexibility in civil service rules that impede our hiring and promotional opportunities. We are also working with personnel to create certain job classifications, much like we did with the utility worker and utility pre-craft trainee. Removing bureaucratic barriers to access will allow us to meet key hiring goals. Another goal is the development of a diversity, equity, and inclusion training institute. The institute will focus on gaining a foundational understanding of DE&I principles, developing common language, and then moving into more layered topics around race, privilege, and power. The desired outcome is for heightened awareness to lead to individual behavior changes that will form the basis of our culture shift. Next slide. Another important focus of the office, which my team will elaborate on at the next commission meeting, is a focus on women in the workforce. Despite important gains, women are still underrepresented in many areas of our workforce. In addition, we know that women of color lose ground at every step in the pipeline. We will work to identify all barriers in our policies, practices, and culture that prevent fulfillment and mobility in the workplace for women. Next slide. Our next focus area is supplier diversity. It is fundamental to the economic success of the department and the region that LADWP have a robust and equitable supplier diversity program. Today, our procurement data is limited in this area and does not show a full and transparent pictures of dollars awarded to businesses in these categories versus dollars actually spent. While we had some significant success in 2020 with several large contracts awarded to small businesses as prime, we still have a ways to go in our minority and women-owned businesses, as well as veteran categories. Next slide. In order to affect change, this office will begin to focus on what the next generation of supplier diversity looks like in the department. We know that increasing the pipeline of diverse businesses is key, and we will begin to measure growth in increasing certification and getting businesses registered on the city's main procurement platform, LA Bobbin. We want to look at expanding our practice of breaking up large contracts into multiple bidder opportunities. And we also want to ensure small businesses are not left out of opportunities because our payment practices serve as a barrier for them. These are just a few of the initiatives this office will work on as it relates to supplier diversity. Next slide. Our next focus area is community engagement, where we recognize that we serve more than one community. This office is committed to engaging our employee community, neighborhoods, and community partners we work with, much like the video that we saw with the Navajo Nation. We intend to engage LADWP employees by providing support to established employee resource groups and helping to establish new ones, integrating cultural celebrations more broadly, and maintaining communication with employees through the development of a DE&I page in our newsletter and a more robust intranet page that includes a portal to share concerns and comments anonymously with office staff. At the community level, we intend to engage customers, community partners, and educational institutions by working with business units to connect them with community organizations in the planning phase of projects and programs. Developing employee volunteer programs where employees can give back to the communities we serve will also be key. Next slide. The next generation of the community engagement work will be to build meaningful relationships with various organizations not on our radar that are doing meaningful work in the communities we serve. We will continue to leverage existing relationships to build on our history of successful partnerships and continue working alongside our communications team to assist in community efforts related to LA 100 debt relief, neighborhood councils, and the SLTRP. Next slide. Our last focus area is equity metrics, monitoring, and improvement. Our goal is to build upon our existing program and make sure we are using data and metrics with community engagement to put an equity lens across every single business line in our organization. We will build upon the work the department is currently doing by identifying gaps in the data and layering in mapping tools. We will ensure, just like with LA100, that community stakeholders are central to establishing the right metrics that take into account lived experience and track community benefits. We plan to consistently review and publish this data to track progress and hold ourselves accountable. Next slide. It is important to reiterate that lasting change of this kind will require a culture shift in the department, and that the work of DE&I is not the work of a single division or a single manager, but the work of everyone in the department, starting with senior leadership. While there are things to celebrate about our culture, this slide features common themes specific to DE&I related experiences and concerns by segments of our employee population. Between the Culture Change Survey employees participated in this summer and the Racial Equity Action Plan, these themes surfaced, and they're related to treatment of employees, performance standards and accountability, as well as changes that need to be made in terms of accountability and management. Next slide. In response to this, and as a part of a comprehensive culture change strategy, the general manager and senior leadership are committed to this work and will focus on the recommendations outlined here, which include improving manager accountability by establishing annual performance goals directly related to DE&I and bringing transparency into the process through incorporating DE&I into our core values and communicating those values consistent with employees and the public. Next slide. This slide is a little bit hard to see, but this next slide is to give you an update on where we stand with hiring in this office. The Office of DE&I is comprised of key business groups that include HR and workforce development, supplier diversity, community engagement, and data equity metrics. Our largest group, HR, will retain its core functions, and we are adding a diversity assistance group made up of 6 analyst positions to help embed DE&I initiatives into their policies and practices. The remainder of the office is made up of the other key business groups mentioned. The 4 positions that are highlighted here are the 4 positions that are filled in our office currently. The yellow vacant boxes represent 20 positions where hiring is already underway for 6 of those authorities. We hope to complete the hiring of the remaining 14 positions by April of this year. Next slide. With staff on board, our goal is to accomplish the following initiatives in the first and second quarters of 2022. We want to launch the Equity Task Force in March. We will work with our employee resource groups to expand and establish mentoring programs. We're hoping to launch our first official one in April, and then establish a DE&I Institute for senior leaders to reinforce these principles as a corporate core value and a leadership skill, hoping to launch in March as well. Also, as mentioned on the previous slide, one of our key next steps is to complete the hiring that needs to happen so that we can move this work forward and continue servicing the organization. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a few, if I may.
Please.
Thank you, Monique, for this passionate presentation of our DEI plan. I do appreciate all the efforts that went into the thinking and really making it stick, so to speak. Because, you know, the common practice is we should just take a look at, like, is it a common practice or is it a proven practice? So I think what you mentioned here are really intentional ways of which the DEI can play a role in achieving greater levels of equity and inclusion and diversity and really acknowledging that it will help reshape and it will also still evolve as we go through all those initiatives that you presented. And we also need to acknowledge just a reality check here that integrating DEI into our organizational practices is nuanced, it's complex, and it's really difficult because we have to look at multi-year outcomes, and that data really needs to be collected and analyzed. Results can take time, and the few benchmarks that we have will need to be measured and analyzed as well. I like the fact that there is a component of listening to and learning from the experiences of our employees, because most successful companies really look at upskilling their listening skills and creating that path for sort of like a two-way communication with our employees. And that one other thing that I just want to mention is that we should not think of DEI just as a hiring problem or an HR strategy. We should view DEI as a business strategy. It should be way up there with our financial, legal, and other business outcomes. So that's one thing I think that I would like to emphasize to our executive leadership as well. And I also commend you for ensuring that there is accountability with this DEI initiative. We want to see that, placing the responsibility on just one person and not cascading the accountability and responsibility to the entire organization could throw a wrench into our diversity and inclusion plan. I believe personally that everyone should play a role in creating an inclusive environment, equitable environment, and opting out is no longer an option. So that accountability piece is important to me personally, and if it means that someone, or ideally a combination of people and groups, are ultimately responsible for monitoring the outcomes and managing roadblocks and making the necessary adjustments along the way. So I commend you for this report. It will be evolving as you start implementing, and I hope that you can ramp up your staff because this is an important division, an important program of our department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes.
I also want to thank you for the presentation this morning. It was very well delivered and I think well nuanced, and I appreciate the comprehensive look at the task ahead of you and ahead of your team. Like Commissioner Reyes, I am also committed to DE&I being viewed through a lens of not just inclusiveness, but really being embedded into the fabric of the organization and seen as a comprehensive business and operational strategy moving forward. The thing that I do want to sort of point out, and this is going back to the slide on equity metrics monitoring and improvement. I don't see a reference to the equity LA 100 equity strategies, which is where a lot of work is currently being done around community-centered metrics, and want to make sure that we avoid both here and in particular when you look at and talk through, or your office thinks about community engagement strategies, that we avoid the department's tendency to deal in silos, so that the diversity, equity, and inclusion division and has its thing, and then power system has its thing, and communications has its thing. We have to have the kind of senior collaboration that understands where work is happening, how that work is being leveraged, and how these things come together. One of the things that has been brought to my attention numerous times in connection with some of our external engagement is that there are different parts of the organization engaging with the same people for this, coming at them, trying to achieve the same objectives, as opposed to our internal coordination, so that we get the information that we need, we understand. So in your office, that you understand what's happening in power, and that you are learning through that process and aligning with that process, as opposed to launching your own. So I just wanted to make sure that we're very clear about that. But this is important work, and we are happy to see it move forward, and look forward to continuing to provide partnership, leadership, and collaboration as the department moves down this road. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is the overall importance of culture management as it relates to equity and inclusion cannot be overstated. And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing that begin to accelerate as well. If there are no other questions or comments, then I think we can move to our next item on the agenda. Are there filed reports? There are filed reports, I'm sorry. Are there any questions or comments related to the reports on file? Seeing, hearing none, we can move on to minutes. We have minutes to be considered for December 13th, the special board meeting, and December 14th. I think all commissioners that are at this meeting were present at both those meetings. So is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So move.
I second.
Would you please take the roll?
Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Aye.
3 ayes.
Okay, terrific. Then I think we are, I think we have concluded our open session and are ready now for closed session. We will be rejoined by Commissioner Neiman Brady, Neiman Marcus, oh my God. Neiman Brady, later at noon today. So I'd like her available for closed session. If we could take a break or pause this meeting at this juncture and move into closed session at, let's say, 12:05, just to account for any delay on her end. Mr. Brevich, if you would give us the proper entry or the proper conclusion to our open session so that we can move into closed session, that would be great.
Certainly. At this time, we will recess and then we will reconvene at 12:05 in closed session to address items M1 through M7. And in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any final actions and reportable actions taken therein. We are in recess until 12:05.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Please remain silent while all the microphones are turned off. Thank you.